Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast. Today's guest is Theresa Lear Levine, EFT Master Practitioner, hypnotherapist, international bestselling author of Becoming More Me, developer of the Becoming More You coaching program, and host of the Becoming More Me podcast. Theresa's mission and coaching movement is to support busy-minded entrepreneurs and professionals through transcending trauma, distracting, and overwhelm so they can double their income, reclaim their personal power, connect deeper in their relationships, and become more present and purpose-driven on their journey of becoming. In this episode, we explore how healing at the root level can transform not only your business, but your relationships, confidence, and capacity for joy. Let's get into this and welcome Theresa.
Thank you so much for having me, Summer.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I can't wait to jump into this. My first question is, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why is that word important?
I would say that the word would be becoming. And obviously that's infused in all of my business name, my podcast, my coaching program. But for me, it's like life has been a constant unfolding, learning, healing, reinventing, discovering who I really am underneath of the conditioning. So becoming would be my word.
Okay. I feel like I should have known that. But I'm glad you said that because the listeners need to hear that because it is an evolution. It is an evolution of change, of wisdom, of learning, of conditioning, of breaking free from conditioning. So there's so much to that. And I think we're going to uncover a lot of that as we move forward through this interview. So Theresa, let's start with your personal journey. Despite external success, you've shared that you struggled with anxiety, distraction, and feeling unfulfilled. What was really happening beneath the surface during that time?
Under the surface was probably a lot of lack mindset that was disguised. Like I wouldn't have thought myself to be scarcity and fear driven, but I think that during the time that I was really uncovering the transformation that I really was going through about a decade ago. I mean, there's been transformation throughout my 47 years, but I'm specifically talking about around a decade ago. There was a lot of scarcity and lack mindset. I was expecting my fourth child, I mean, in a great marriage, wonderful roof over my head, live in a great area, have a great job, so many good things, health, like all the important things. And still, it just felt like I'm cramming the things that I need to do into the cracks of my day. There's no time for me. Like, why aren't things easier? Another diaper to change, that kind of thing. So I think there was a lot of scarcity and lack mindset that was preventing me enjoying all of the good things more.
You know what I really loved that you just said is trying to fit everything into the cracks of your day.
Mhm.
I know that will resonate with so many people. But let me ask you a question. I'm going off my outline here. What was the change? What was the what I call bracketing, the pause that happened to make you stop, pause, and reflect on what was actually going on underneath the surface? Tell us more.
That's a great question. So, I mean, I've always been somebody that loved to learn, right? I'm always reading a book, taking a course, getting a certification to the point of like, I got to a point where I had to stop and be like, Theresa, you're enough. You have all the wisdom that you need to do whatever you want to do. And a few years ago, I was like, you're just not going to do any of that this year. You're just going to work with what you've got. But at the time, still, it was always occupying the brain with something. I couldn't just be quiet and be with myself, always kind of trying to multitask, even though it's a myth. And luckily, a lot of the things that I was feeding into my mind were positive things. I was listening to transformative podcasts. I was reading books that were really making me think differently. And those kind of things heightened my awareness to what was going on. And then, trying different meditations or different ways to kind of unwind or I was kind of anxious at the time. I had a lot of anxiety and just experimenting with that. So I think it was the things that were allowing me to have greater awareness. And then that greater awareness leads you to trying new things and opening up new pathways. Being somebody that likes to learn a lot, I think I thought for a long time that I could figure everything out from learning. And I didn't quite make the connection that the embodiment piece was missing. But between that and ADHD, I'd often feel like I was kind of like running into a wall. And it's like, "Ah, God, I know how to do that. I know how to have a successful business, or I know how to like be a better parent than I'm showing up as today. Or, why am I picking a fight with my husband? Or like all these kind of things where it's like, I know better. So why do I keep doing the same thing that feels so unhelpful? And that is where I stumbled into, thank goodness, nervous system and subconscious mind work, because that was the missing piece that allowed me to embody the knowledge and the change and the transformation and actually get traction on the change I wanted to create.
Oh, you just helped me segue right into my next question. Brava. So, you often speak about nervous system dysregulation and subconscious protection. So, let's talk about that. How are past trauma and limiting beliefs quietly shaping our business results and relationships without us even realizing it? And you've mentioned some really key words. How do we bracket or pause? How do we begin to embody? How do we reflect to actually get to this point of understanding that there might be some nervous system dysregulation?
Yeah, and it affects everything. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
no joke. Our nervous system's primary job is protection. It could not care less about happiness or success, does not care. So, when we have these painful or overwhelming moments, especially the things that happen earlier in life, the brain stores that in patterns. You went through something painful, and your brain is going to store that, like, okay, let's never feel that way again. And the problem is that those protective patterns don't stay in childhood. They don't stay in your earlier years. They quietly start to shape how we show up in business, in relationships, even with our own health, all the important things, right? Health, wealth, and relationships. So somebody might think that they struggle with procrastination or follow through. I'm in the world of ADHD entrepreneurs, so that's big in my neck of the woods. But often it's subconscious protection. It's perhaps visibility for them in a situation earlier in life led to being criticized or being rejected. So then the nervous system might slow things down the moment that success or greater visibility gets close. So we can often think, gosh, we must be like lazy or incapable or something, but the nervous system is doing its job. It's just doing usually a better job than we would like it to be doing. So we have to be able to be aware of that. Again, awareness is a huge tool for being able to see these patterns and then being able to rewire them, which we can't do with the conscious mind. You can consciously understand this stuff happened when I was younger, so it makes sense that, I have relationship issues or I have a fear of success or whatever else, but you can't resolve the pattern with the thinking mind in the, beta brainwave state. That needs to be resolved through the nervous system and through the subconscious. Because that's where it got wired in. It got wired in when we were too young to question it.
Absolutely. It even begins prenatally.
Yeah, it's true.
I was part of this program, the new parent support team, way back in the 90s. And it was a program that the military had. And we would study our families in regards to prenatal if they were going to be at high risk of certain factors. And so we were looking at them from early on so we can make sure that they were connected with the right resources. So when you talk about it starts early on, it can even start in the prenatal development. And so we hold on to those things without even realizing it because of the exposure. Like, for instance, somebody very close to me was in an abusive relationship while she was pregnant. She was in fear. There was traumatic experiences happening. Guess what happened and passed through to the baby? Same thing. There was fear. I love this whole idea and development of our nervous system. And then we go through that nervous system dysregulation and the trauma exposure, right? And where we keep that. And that is in the subconscious and how that develops over time. That doesn't leave us until we start regulating that, understanding that, having recognition, and really working with that subconscious to help us go beyond those protective factors where our system is re regulating in a way that it doesn't have to be in fight or flight mode constantly.
Yeah.
And that's significant. So let's go on to the next question because it kind of leads from where we were to now. Many busy-minded entrepreneurs struggle with feeling not enough, as you said. Why is that such a common pattern among driven professionals? And what does true self-trust actually look like?
Those are good ones. It's a really common thing. In fact, I don't think I have ever coached anyone that didn't on some level have a feeling of not enoughness. It's that common. And even for people who have done a lot of work, I mean, I still struggle with it and I have done a lot of work and there's still places where it'll just creep up and it's like, oh, hey, look, it's still there. Shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so not enoughness. It's scarcity wiring, kind of like I was talking about with what I had going on. If somebody grew up around instability or criticism or pressure, then they tend to learn that, resources disappear or approval disappears or their own safety disappears. And so we're always kind of scanning for what's missing.
Mm.
Then there's also conditional worth. I know a lot of people in my world, high achievers, you learn that either love equals performance or safety is related to your achievement or you've got to be successful to belong. So all of those things are conditional worth. And so we keep moving the finish line, we keep raising the bar. We never arrive at that place where we feel like, oh, we actually are enough. We actually are worthy. There's nothing we need to do to be that. It already is. And then hypervigilance comes in too, because entrepreneurs especially have very alert nervous systems and it can fuel creativity and it can fuel our drive, but it also means that our brain is also always searching for the next problem to solve. And it makes it hard to feel satisfied. So that can make us feel not enough. It's rarely like a strategy issue. It's just kind of like it's like a nervous system that learned early on that safety comes from doing more, proving more, pushing, all the masculine pushing we're all doing more, fixing more. I'll just got to do more. And until we can address that pattern subconsciously, then it doesn't feel safe to just rest into success.
Yeah. I love every single thing you just mentioned because they're factors that absolutely impact our daily living, our life, our health, our well-being, the relationships we have. And so we are in dysregulation when we are overcompensating. Our body, our mind, our wellness feels it. And as you said, we are in that hyper alert mode. I just did a talk last night on belonging, and I know that you, with your being a practitioner, you probably know this, but we had Freud, right? The father of psychology. We also had Alfred Adler. And Alfred Adler deviated from Freud because he said not everything has to do with the subconscious. There are other variables that influence our behavior. However, one of those big variables is belonging. And you mentioned that
Mhm.
belonging. And he created something called Gemeinschaftsgefühl. And
Mhm.
Gemeinschaftsgefühl is community connection, wanting to be connected. And we strive for a sense of belonging as human beings. And so when we do, we find that because of that conditioning, we're supposed to do A, B, and C. And if we don't do that, that can really create, as you said, that not enoughness,
Mhm.
that lacking. And then we start overcompensating. So we start overworking. We start trying to be the pleaser. We start trying to do A, B, and C. And guess where that leads us? To burnout.
Burnout. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
burnout, to confusion, being hyper alert, to trying to fit those things into the cracks. I mean, everything that you've talked about. And so, how do we work on this? And I think it's part of working on that subconscious. But once you have that awareness to be able to work on that subconscious, then how do you move forward? Like, how do you get the help? How do you start becoming?
Yeah, that's a great question too. When we become aware of this belonging or overcompensating pattern that we have, the next step has nothing to do with trying harder to fix it. So thankfully, we don't have to do that because that often recreates the same kind of like burnout state for us. So the shift happens when the source of safety can change. So once we become aware, it's about shifting where the sense of belonging comes from. If belonging is always dependent on doing more or proving more or pleasing people, then we don't ever get to rest. But instead of trying to earn that externally, we build a better internal relationship with ourselves. So it's like, what actually feels true for me right now? What would support me instead of performing for approval? Those kind of questions you can start asking yourself to explore that on a deeper level. And then you'll start to notice that overcompensation in real time. Real time and real life experiences are some of the best ways to meet these nervous system patterns, to be able to nourish your nervous system and to be able to show up in a different way than you might have previously based on your patterns. And burnout rarely appears suddenly. There's signals. You're saying yes when your body is saying no. You're pushing through total exhaustion. You're trying to be everything for everybody. And awareness allows you to interrupt that pattern a little bit earlier instead of after you're depleted. And then you'll be able to regulate before you respond and not, respond from a dysregulated system that might then default to the people pleasing or the overworking and all that kind of stuff. So just little practices. I always say, even though my go-to practices are hypnotherapy and EFT tapping, breath work precedes everything. Our breath is something that we are always attached to. If we're not breathing, we're dead. So when you're having these moments, when you're feeling triggered or you know that you're about to step into an old pattern, if you can at least just have a moment to take a lovely deep inhale in through your nose and just have a second to process. And a little bit of a longer exhale if you want to, downshift the nervous system state a little bit. And just that one breath, that one more conscious and aware breath before you decide what you're going to do. And maybe you do some EFT tapping next, or maybe you respond, or maybe you do something else. But the breath preceding whatever is going to happen next is big in overcoming some of these patterns too.
Yeah, I so appreciate those tips. Yesterday, when I was doing a presentation, these professors and these different administrators were coming in and they were like overwhelmed. And the facilitator asked, "Give me a win for today." Nobody could offer a win. And this lady was like, "There's no wins here." Da, 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 da. And I was like, oh boy. Okay, so here we go.
Good. I don't love that. When I do like group coaching, we don't begin until everyone has shared a win. And I don't care if you came in to talk about something super challenging or devastating that happened that week, there is a win you can find. It creates momentum. Like, you've got to be able to find wins.
Absolutely. So I was like, I'm going to offer a win, but we're also going to start with a breathing exercise. And so, just as you said, we are going to recenter this right now, right? And we are going to take breath in and we are going
Mhm.
to exhale. Even when you go to the doctor and they're taking your blood pressure, before you take your blood pressure, they ask, do 3 deep breaths, because we
Yeah.
want to lower that. We want to get recentered. The body is responding to everything we do. So, I'm loving this conversation. Let's talk about your international best-selling book, Becoming More Me. And if someone were to pick up your book today, what are 3 things that are practical and that they could use from this book in their daily lives right away?
Yeah, awesome. So, first of all, the book is full of EFT tapping. So, I will convey stories about, my own life and my clients' work and things like that, which I guess that could be number one. That's helpful
Hmm.
because it's always helpful to be able to relate other people's challenges and their wins to the things that maybe you're working through or the things that you'd like to achieve. And then once you've kind of assimilated the stories and integrated those, then there's EFT tapping on all different things that are common subjects, money blocks and, letting go of things and a lot of common things that have been really prevalent in my own life and the people that I've worked with. And the other thing that is totally actionable right out of the gates is that whether you get the Audible, the paperback, Kindle, there's a whole bonus resources section. And so there's like an 8-week coaching course that you get
Ooh.
access to with the book. I have videos of me coaching you through the chapters and providing additional details and asking questions that are going to take you to the next level of your own awareness and your own personal growth. So those are definitely things that make the book like very actionable and applicable, not just like an entertaining story to read, but there's a lot of self-work and growth that comes out of taking the actions aligned with the book.
I love that. That is very helpful. I'm going to take you back just a couple of steps here because our listeners might not all know what EFT tapping is. It's emotional freedom technique. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite ways to change the way I feel about anything, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental. And it has the scientifically backed power to do all of those things. So it combines the ancient Chinese medicine with like acupressure points, which we have all over our body. It uses 9 of them mainly that can really emotionally and physically overhaul the body and the nervous system. And it combines that ancient wisdom with modern psychology. So what happens is we do what we call a round of EFT at a time, and we speak to whatever the issue is. So you could use this on, a backache and a headache, or you could use this on your money blocks. You could use this on old trauma. You could use this on things that you're future pacing and anxious about that haven't happened yet, might not even ever happen yet, but they're still impacting you in the present moment. And for me, the biggest impact that EFT had on my life was bringing me back to the present moment. When I started doing it and I had such young kids, it's like I didn't even realize, Summer, like how not present I had been.
Mm.
Until you really step into presence, your present moment is the only place that your power can be used. Calling your power back to the present instead of allowing it to be leaked into past situations where you have no power, leaked into future situations that haven't even happened yet. It's such a waste of your energy and your power. So when you can really pull it back here and now, it's like the only place I have my power right now is this conversation that I'm having with you. Got a son that's sick in the other room and home from school today, but I can't do anything for him right now. I'm here having a conversation with you. The present moment is here. So learning how to do that was huge for me. And EFT was a big catalyst for me to understand where my power was at any given moment and how to get emotionally free from the things that were preventing me from being in my full power.
I love the evolution of this conversation because, again, we talked about the bracketing, we talked about the pause, we talked about the reflection, we talked about, what this is, how you can do it, these tips. And all of this is so critical because a lot of times we're moving so fast that we're not present, we're not aware, we're not listening to the signals or signs of our body. We're going so fast. We're not even kinetically connecting as humans. We're somewhere else where our mind is over here in 100 different places. So how do we pause? How do we sit? How do we stand? How do we, whatever, take a moment just to be, to breathe? And so we've talked about these things. You challenge the hustle and grind narrative and talk about pleasure fueled achievement. What is the connection between pleasure, slowness, and sustainable success?
Oh, everything. I used to be totally embroiled in the hustle culture and do and prove and all that kind of stuff. So no stranger to it. And it was really hard for me to learn how to slow down. And it's interesting because I talk about this in my book a lot. And I didn't know that I was actually going to talk about it when I started writing my book. But the process of writing my book brought forward a lot of things that I was talking about anyway in a new way. And one of those things was the ability to slow down and embody pleasure. I had started to try to write this book somewhere like 4 different times. And it was always through this like masculine lens of like, I'm going to write for 15 minutes a day and the book will be done in 2 months and then I'll publish it. And it's like, ugh. I never enjoyed like what was happening when I was trying to do that. And plus like the 15 minutes a day, it might have lasted for like 2 or 3 days, but I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, and this EFT is actually in the book, like how I kind of like let go of the project, the round that I did. And it's great for anybody that's kind of like feeling like they've got this sticky situation with something that they're not quite sure what to do with. And I released it. I spent the following year, talking with people like you, podcasts, speaking engagements, just really getting clear on like why this was important to me, who I'm talking to, and all of that. And then when I started to write the book again, I was like, I'm not going to write any of this unless it is like through the lens of pleasure and enjoyment and everything else. And it really changed what was produced. Like there was nobody out there that was going to benefit or enjoy reading the first version of the book that I tried to write. It was awful because it was like the energy was bad. But when the energy was different, and when I was taking care of myself in a different way while I was writing it, I created something that I'm really proud of and that I think really serves people in a different way. And that came through learning to slow down, which I didn't, learn when I wrote the book. I learned that previous to that. But I mean, for me, like one of the big ways I learned how to slow down was through my calendar, because I used to just be one of those people. I kind of like wake up in the morning and the calendar was there and that kind of just determined the day. And then I just kind of just went and did what I needed to do whatever was on the calendar. And then I started getting really aware of the Wednesday before the following week, I'd sit down, which was hard for me also because, you sit down to look at what you have to do and then you want to just start doing the things instead of like
Yeah.
actually planning. And so I'd have to kind of like put that time aside and be very conscious of how I was doing it. And I would look at my following week and I would plan it out so that I actually kind of knew in advance, like, oh, okay, so I've got to drive somewhere on this day. It's going to take this amount of time. I need to do this. I've got to get something at the grocery store in order to do this event, or I need to figure it all out, right? But that took me slowing down to do that. And I also, like, as far as my business was concerned, I closed my calendars off the week before. So it's like nobody could drop last minute appointments in my lap the week of or anything else. It was like once that Wednesday before I looked at my calendar, I'm like, things do come up. It's not, life is life and there's tons of uncertainty no matter what. But for the most part, I had an idea of what my week had in store. And that allowed me to be able to like expand, breathe, not feel like stressed or anxious about not knowing what was coming up, and to also feel like aware of like, this is my upcoming week. This is what I need to do to make the most of it and to be present for the things that I have coming up. But that was one of the first ways that I really learned how to slow down and get present. And I realized that's not being present in the moment of next week, but that is planning, and that planning allows you to be present in those moments.
Great tip. Great evolution there again of how that happened and why that's important. We have touched on so many things, but I want you to briefly touch on your Becoming More podcast and your Becoming More You program.
Yeah. So, gosh, the podcast is coming up on 5 years, 6 years. I don't know.
Awesome.
Wild.
Congratulations.
You. I love as a platform to share things that are working for me and to be able to interview amazing people that are able to share things that complement the path of becoming. So podcasting's been a lot of fun. And my Becoming More You program is my program where I work with people both one-on-one and in a group setting using hypnotherapy, using EFT tapping, using practical life and business coaching to really help them to step into calm and confidence and clarity so that they can create that next level pleasure fueled success in their business and in their life. And yeah, that's a lot of fun too. I really love being able to be like high touch in that program and really create very personalized transformations with people.
The energy that you have created around what you do and the programs in the book really is infused in this conversation. And I'm sure that people, when they read the book or get connected with your program or your podcast, will feel that same energy. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
So as we come to the close of the interview, my last question is, for listeners who feel stuck in overwhelm or self-sabotage, what is one simple practice they can begin this week to calm their nervous system and shift their subconscious patterns?
Yeah. So I think that we covered this kind of already because pausing is definitely the simplest thing that you can do. I know it sounds so like stupid simple almost like, okay, yeah, whatever. But there's so much power in that when you actually apply it when you're triggered versus just at any old time. And instead of like fighting the resistance there, because when you really do apply this, part of you is going to be like, I don't really want to do this right now. And that is okay. Resistance and frustration are some of my favorite things to work with people on because they're usually really good telltale signs of other things that need to be unfolded. But just that moment of awareness can really start calming the nervous system. So I think that's honestly the simplest thing. And then just to add on something, another really simple thing is just asking yourself a good subconscious question. I have an entire program that I created around this called Finish What You Start, which has like non-triggering affirmations and subconscious questions. But if you've never explored subconscious questions, if you've got something that feels challenging to you, and instead of trying to affirm it, like if you were working on something around money or whatever, and you were trying to affirm I am a millionaire, but you're not, you know how triggering that is? Like it brings up all the beliefs and stuff about why you're not. A subconscious question would bring you into something like, what would it take for me to become a millionaire in the next year? Something like that. It opens up the mind to look for solutions instead of trying to affirm something that your body and your subconscious don't believe is true. And your subconscious, your RAS, your reticular activating system, will bring you the answers around the clock, even while you sleep. So the easiest thing, like when you're facing something, like how can you put that into a question? Which would be like, what would it take? Or how is it so easy? Why am I so good at? Like these kind of things that are going to reframe that. I think that's a tip that helps a lot of people to really make progress in areas that feel sticky.
Oh, fantastic. We've covered a lot here. There are a ton of tips throughout this whole episode. But thank you, Theresa, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Summer.
It was a delight. You can connect with Theresa Lear Levine on Instagram, YouTube, and at theresalearlevine.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.